Members, the Senate is back in session. We are in regular session. Having completed the items on the regular session daily file, we will now recess the regular session and convene the 8th extraordinary session. The prayer and the pledge will be deemed complete. Under motions and resolutions, without objection, Senate Bill 34 in the 8th extraordinary session will be referred to the Rules Committee. Hearing and seeing no objection, it is so ordered. And Senator Duchesne, do I understand that you are prepared to offer a motion to suspend Joint Rule 10.5 at this time?
Yes. Are we in special session? Yes.
We are in the 8th extraordinary session, members.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and members. I would move to suspend Joint Rule 10.5 for purposes of hearing the following measures: AB 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, and 10.
Without objection, so ordered. Roll call, excuse me. Secretary will call the roll. Motion is to suspend Joint Rule 10.5. Two-thirds vote is required. This is a motion to suspend Rule 10.5. Secretary, call the roll.
Onnested. Aye. Alquist. Aye. Ashburn. Aye. Calderon. Aye. Cedillo. Cogdill. Aye. Corbett. Aye. Correa. Aye. Cox. Aye. Denham. DeSaulnier. Aye. Duchesne. Aye. Dutton. Aye. Flores. Hancock. Aye. Harmon. Hollingsworth. Aye. Huff. Kehoe. Leno. Liu. Aye. Lowenthal. Aye. Maldonado. Aye. Negrete McLeod. Aye. Oropesa. Aye. Padilla. Aye. Pavley. Aye. Price. Aye. Romero. Aye. Runner. Smidian. Aye. Steinberg. Aye. Strickland. Walters. Wiggins. Wolk. Wright. Wyland. Aye. Yee. Yee. Aye. One more.
Call the absent members.
Cedillo. Denham. Flores. Harmon. Huff. Kehoe. Leno. Runner. Strickland. Walters. Wiggins. Wolk. Wright.
Call the absent members.
Cedillo. Denham. Flores. Harmon. Huff. Kehoe. Leno. Runner. Strickland. Walters. Wiggins. Wolk. Wright.
Call the absent members.
Cedillo. Denham. Flores. Flores, aye. Harmon. Huff. Kehoe. Leno. Runner. Strickland. Walters. Cedillo, aye. Wiggins. Wolk. Wright. Mr. President, ayes 28, no 0.
Ayes 28, noes 0. The joint rule is suspended. Members, that being the case, we have introduction and first reading of bills that will be deemed complete. That takes us to consideration of the daily file. Again, we are in the 8th extraordinary session. Senate third reading files. Senator Duchesne, do you have any items to take up on the Senate third reading file?
No.
All right. If not, then we'll go to the Assembly third reading file. File item 5. Is that your first item, Senator Duchesne?
Yes.
Secretary will read. One moment, Senator Duchesne. Could we ask the Sergeant at Arms to call the absent members?
Can we find them?
Thank you.
Assembly Bill 1 by the Assembly Committee on Budget, an act relating to the Budget Act of 2009.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and members. This is the first in the series of bills that are ready for us to take up today based on the actions that the Budget Committee has taken over the last 3 weeks of hearings. The first bill is fairly straightforward. It shifts $3.5 million in federal funds away from state operations so that it can go to direct services for AIDS patients in view of the more constrained, the cuts that have been done over the last couple of years. We have these federal funds available. We can now shift them away from state operations to direct services provided to patients. Ask for your aye vote. One more comment only is if we don't do this, we could lose the federal funds. Better to spend them and spend them on services. Ask for your aye vote.
Senator Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to comment on this measure, but much of what I'm going to say is also germane to the rest of the budget package that we're going to be debating and voting on today and also on Monday. And the general comment that we would make is that while there are reductions and there are certain measures within this package that Republicans will be supporting because they reduce expenditures, we want to remind you, however, that we are not hitting the mark when it comes to what we need to be doing where we are on the expenditure side and the need for reductions in those expenditures to match the revenues that we have. We would just point out the governor's special session budget proposal had proposed $6.5 billion in real programmatic spending reductions in order to remedy that structural budget deficit that we have continued to paper over here in the budget year over year. The problem is that all told, this measure out of real programmatic spending reductions only amounts to about $1.6 billion in real programmatic spending reductions. And that just is not enough to fix the problem that we have been dealing with. It's another issue of continuing to not deal with the tough, difficult decisions. There's not enough reduction in health and human services and in education funding proposals in order to make up that proposal balance and actually take on the problem and solve the problem. We would point out, while it fails to solve the problem, 2/3 of this package's solutions involve fund shifts, deferrals, tax revenue increases, and cost avoidance measures. We really need to deal with this problem, and this is only taking on a small portion of it in the real programmatic reductions in order to bridge that structural gap. You will find our opposition to many of these measures because they're heading the wrong way, particularly on the so-called tax enforcement measures. When we are talking about fixing this problem in a real sense to go forward for the state of California in a fiscally healthy fashion, we have to make sure that we're not only reducing those expenditures, but if you want to see revenues, get jobs back in California. Having those tax enforcement measures that are going to send small businesses continuing out of the state is the wrong way to go. We hope that you'll reconsider those and get back on track in terms of let's get the spending in line with the revenues.
Further debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Senator Ducheney, you may close.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, I would just briefly respond to the overall statement. I think these are the cuts and changes and consistent mostly with governor's proposals that when the committee heard them were ready and something you could act on. We heard hours and hours, members, probably at least 20 or 30 hours of hearings, including public testimony on many of the governor's proposals with respect especially to education and health and human services cuts. Some of those are so dramatic, so programmatically unimplementable, one of our big problems with the current year budget is that the governor said he could do a lot of things that he was not able to do, that the administration did not provide savings that they said they would be able to provide, precisely on some of these same kinds of issues. Several of the proposed cuts were things that have already been found illegal by the courts and have put us partly in this situation. So one of the reasons, members, that many of those are not in the package is that they obviously need further discussion at committee level. And members will recall that we've done some rather dramatic cuts in Health and Human Services, especially, and education last year, that many folks in our communities are still struggling with, and could have very dramatic negative impacts on our economy. So yes, we did tread carefully in this early session on those kinds of things that could be more disruptive to our economy. We did not find them to be cost effective in many cases, and or were not really ready for us to consider it in a clear fashion. So we will be taking those up again in subcommittee after the special session is over, as we move into the budget year discussions. We look forward to the opportunity to find more and better savings like the one that's before us, where we can save at the state operations level and still provide services to our constituents. Ask for your aye vote.
Members, the chamber is a little bit noisy this morning and difficult for the secretary to hear the roll as it is called. We could ask for your help by keeping the chamber quiet. Conversations to the rear or outside of the chamber, please. Secretary, call the roll.
Onnested. Aye. Alquist. Aye. Ashburn. Aye. Calderon. Cedillo. Aye. Cogdill. Aye. Corbett. Aye. Correa. Aye. Cox. Aye. Denham. DeSaulnier. Aye. Duchesne. Aye. Dutton. Aye. Flores. Hancock. Aye. Harmon. Hollingsworth. Aye. Huff. Aye. Kehoe. Aye. Leno. Liu. Aye. Lowenthal. Aye. Maldonado. Aye. Negrete McLeod. Aye. Oropesa. Aye. Padilla. Aye. Pavley. Aye. Price. Aye. Romero. Runner. Aye. Smidian.
Aye.
Aye. Steinberg. Aye. Strickland. Aye. Walters. Aye. Wiggins. Aye. Wolk. Aye. Wright. Aye. Wyland. Aye. Yee. Yee. Aye. Romero. Aye. Mr. President, ayes 34, no 0.
Ayes 34, no 0. Call the absent members.
Calderon. Denham. Flores. Aye. Harmon. Leno. That's it. Ayes 35, no 0.
Ayes 35, no 0. Senator Duchesne places a call. File item number 6. Senator Duchesne, Secretary will read.
Assembly Bill 2 by the Assembly Committee on Budget, an act relating to the Budget Act of 2010.
Again, members, this is a bill that lists a series of the savings in the combined two-year budget savings that are being projected. Many of these are in the budget year. However, by enacting them now, we both create stability and a platform for our future budget discussions and also allow certain implementation actions to go forward more quickly. Among the savings enumerated in this bill are the ongoing delay of the conservatorship and guardianship legislation passed 3 or 4 years ago that we've been delaying every year for $17 million in savings in the judiciary. $45 million of general fund relief tied to an increase in the DNA penalty fee, which is in a separate bill. The actual fee increase is in a separate bill. It is a penalty on criminals, member, not on the general public. It also recognizes substantial savings in corrections, in particular the over $800 million that we believe and the receiver also believes can be achieved in prison health care costs by moving to managed care, and a whole variety of proposals that they are working with, and we intend to continue to monitor and assist them in making sure they can implement all of those savings. There are other savings tied to for instance, in the juvenile justice area, deciding that if you were convicted as an adult, you are now over 18, you can be moved out of the juvenile justice facility to an adult correctional facility. You must have been convicted under the adult conviction statutes, and after you turn 18, you could then be transferred to adult corrections facility, which are much less expensive to run. As we continue to empty out our juvenile justice facilities, it extends $228 million in savings, members, from delaying, deferring, suspending mandates, and in non-education related areas. These are extensions, members, of basically the same mandate relief that we did last year, continuing it for another year. And there are also almost $500 million in savings tied to a general 5% cut to all of our state administration. Consistent with an earlier governor's executive order, it does state, however, legislative intent that the first priority for achieving these savings shall be at the administrative management level, not at the ground services delivery level. We reflected additional operating and expense and equipment savings related to taking those positions, and $28 million in additional Medi-Cal fraud efforts that the department indicated they thought would be helpful to finding any fraud in the Medi-Cal area, without adding the additional positions that the governor initially proposed. So again, members, this is a substantial reduction in personnel, or substantial reduction in costs in our prison healthcare system. Ask for your aye vote.
Debate or discussion? Debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Onnested? No. Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? No. Calderon? Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? No. Corbett? Aye. Correa? No. Cox? No. Denham? DeSaulnier? Aye. Duchesne? Aye. Dutton? No. Flores? Aye. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? Hollingsworth? No. Huff? No. Kehoe? Aye. Leno? Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Maldonado? No. Negrete McLeod? What was that? Oropesa? Aye. Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Price? Aye. Romero? Aye. Runner? No. Smidian?
Aye.
Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? No. Walters? No. Wiggins? Aye. Wolk? Aye. Wright? Aye. Wyland? No. Yee? Yee, no. You were aye? Aye? Okay. Negrete McLeod, aye.
Call the absent members.
Calderon? Denham? Harmon? Leno? That's it.
Ayes 21, noes 14. Senator Duchesne moves the call. File item number 7. Senator Duchesne, you're prepared to present file item number 7. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 3 by the Assembly Committee on Budget, an act relating to fines and forfeitures.
Thank you very much. Mr. President and members, this bill specifically is trailer language to enact some of the measures in the previous bill. It would increase the penalty charged to convicted offenders from $1 to $3 for every $10 base fine, generating additional revenue to support state forensic labs and ensure that state and local law enforcement agencies can continue to investigate and prosecute those crimes in an efficient fashion. It does make a technical adjustment to current law that will allow about $500,000 in federal funds received in previous fiscal years to be released, and to reimburse the Alcohol and Beverage Control Fund for certain activities that are consistent with those funds, and does direct the Department of Corrections to consider modifying the current plan it has to lay off 800 teachers in programs that assist the prison population with education that we know helps with recidivism. They have a plan for their reductions that included basically taking out all of these teachers, even though we are trying harder and harder to attack our recidivism rate. The language is not, how shall I say, prescriptive. It's more encouraging them to, in fact, and it's permissive, but we're trying to get the department to pay attention to their mission is partly, and they're saying they want to do more to help with recidivism. On the other hand, they're taking cuts in areas of the corrections budget that are the most problematic for doing so. We encourage them, and as we go through the subcommittees, I know Mr. Desaulnier and the members of Sub 4 will be looking for additional reductions at headquarters and at mid-management levels rather than at the direct services level. Again, it is strictly permissive language in stating the intent of the legislature that they should really relook at this proposal for layoffs. Ask for your aye vote.
Debate or discussion? Debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Onnested? No. Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? No. Calderon? Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? No. Corbett? Aye. Correa? Cox? No. Denham? DeSaulnier? Aye. Duchesne? Aye. Dutton? No. Flores? Aye. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? Hollingsworth? No. Huff? No. Kehoe? Leno? Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Maldonado? No. Negrete McLeod? Aye. Oropesa? Aye. Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Price? Romero? Runner? Smidian? Runner no. Smidian?
Aye.
Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? No. Walters? No. Wiggins? Wolk? Aye. Wright? Wyland? No. Yee? Yee aye. Correa no. Romero aye. Mr. President, ayes 18, noes 13.
Call the absent members.
Calderon, Denham, Harmon, Kehoe, Leno, Price, Wiggins, aye. Wright. Mr. President, ayes 19, noes 13.
Ayes 19, noes 13. Senator Duchesne moves the call. Members, that brings us to file item number 8 in the 8th extraordinary session. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 4 by the Assembly Committee on Budget, an act relating to social services.
Senator Duchesne.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and members. This bill makes changes in the developmental services and foster care. Right? On file 8? Am I on the right? It's before, right? Yeah. That are needed to address, again, the fiscal emergency that we're in. This would continue. These are Health and Human Services reductions. They continue the 3% reduction for provider reimbursement at regional centers that was enacted last year through the 10-11 budget year. Suspend certain administrative requirements on the regional centers in order to allow them greater flexibility to meet a 3% operation reduction, again, through the budget year. And also make some changes in state law that will allow us to have increased federal participation in foster care. Ask for your aye vote.
Debate or discussion? Debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Onnested? Aye. Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? Aye. Calderon? Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? Aye. Corbett? Aye. Correa? No. Cox? Aye. Denham? DeSaulnier? Aye. Duchesne? Aye. Dutton? Aye. Flores? Aye. Hancock? Harmon? Hollingsworth? Aye. Huff? Aye. Kehoe? Leno, Liu, Lowenthal, I. Maldonado, I. Negrete McLeod, I. Oropesa, I. Padilla, I. Pavley, Price, Romero, I. Runner, I. Smidian, I. Steinberg, I. Strickland, no. Walters, I. Wiggins, Wolk, I. Wiggins, I. Wright, Wyland, I. Yee. Yee, no. Mr. President, ayes 26, noes 3.
Ayes 26, noes 3. Senator Duchesne asks that the bill be on call, be placed on call. Senator Duchesne, I believe your next item is file item number 11. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Secretary,
87.
please read.
Assembly Bill 7 by the Assembly Committee on Budget, an act relating to the environment, making an appropriation therefore, and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Thank you very much. Mr. President and members, this bill enacts certain changes to the Beverage Recycling Act that will allow it to do a couple of important things. One is to put a lot of people back to work. The reductions that were made having been done across the board by the governor last year, have created a lot of displacement in the industry, caused some business to have to close. This will restore the fund in a way that focuses on that primary mission and allow many of those companies to get back into business and do what they're supposed to do. It does make reductions in some other grant programs that are considered a less priority. It will advance payments so that we have a better cash flow into this fund and allow it to get to the place where we can have the more substantial policy discussion probably needed with respect to this fund during the budget discussions of the spring. But this will get a lot of folks back to work and make it move forward. Additionally, members, it makes changes in the State Water Pollution Control Revolving Fund to conform to federal law, similar to changes we made to allow the appropriate expenditure of the Recovery Act funds from the federal government. This also these changes will make the same changes that were made for those funds for ongoing federal funds that go into this important fund for many of our local communities who are seeking water treatment facilities and the opportunity to improve water quality in their communities. Ask for your aye vote.
Debate or discussion? Senator Runner.
Yeah, can we just ask, this particular bill, where I know there's a desire to do urgency on this bill. I know the industry is looking for that. And I think, again, there are just a couple of issues we're actually trying to work out this very moment. And if it could just be put off for a little bit, let us see if we can get through that, and that way it can still come up this morning. Thanks.
Any objection?
Put it over. That's fine.
Without objection, the measure will be put over. Before we move on, Senator Runner, it raises an important point, members. There's a minor error in the Senate Daily File. This is, in fact, a 27-vote item because of the urgency clause. The measure will be put over without objection. And Senator Duchesne, I believe that takes us to file item 12. Is that correct?
12.
All right. Secretary will read.
Assembly Bill 8 by the Assembly Committee on Budget,
Control.
an act relating to taxation.
I think. At least that's where I have it.
Senator Duchesne.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and members. This bill makes various changes in our tax code, all focused on better tax enforcement. It does not raise, increase any taxes that already exist, but many of these are FTB-sponsored measures that will allow them to have greater tools, better tools for purposes of enforcing tax liability. With respect to the banks, allowing banks to provide information to FTB, and these are for settled tax disputes, members, not while it's under dispute, not the first time you get a notice, but after you've gone through any adjudicatory proceedings necessary to create a final tax debt that can be collected by the Franchise Tax Board. It would allow the board then to seek and have matches done by banks to let them know if somebody has an account at that bank, in which case they might have the opportunity to collect on that existing debt. The banks are not opposed to this, as I understand it. It has been worked out. It was a lot of work that Senator Wolk did on legislation that did go through this House and policy committees last year. We are incorporating it now as a tax enforcement measure. Again, at the budget hearings, the FTB has asked for some of these authorities. Similarly, they've asked for the ability, as they do both with the banks, they do for child support debt currently. They also have ability currently in child support to suspend professional licenses if people are not being consistent with their debt. Again, this would allow them to do that, but specifically has provisions. It's not intended to just take their licenses. It's intended to get their attention, so they will come in and come up with a way to work out a payment plan. It specifically says once they've been noticed that their license could be suspended, if they come in and work out a payment plan, the suspension notice goes away. All of these changes a few definitions to make it less easy for people to abuse our tax system. And probably the most controversial one, members, I know, but I think it is one of the most frustrating pieces of our inability to sort of broadly reform our tax system to be consistent with the 21st century. Is the question of nexus for out-of-state online sellers. Our individual local community businesses who pay taxes in California, who pay property taxes in California, who employ California residents, are placed every day at a disadvantage by folks who are trying to avoid, basically, collecting taxes that are already owed by the consumer. We call it a use tax for sales that are made in California to Californians. I don't think any of us would object to paying the appropriate sales tax on our online purchases, and when we buy those online purchases from companies who have a clear physical presence in California, they have been responsible corporate citizens and collect that tax on our behalf. Many are not. And have refused to do that, despite the fact that they do business with California businesses. And so what this bill does, members, is says there is a nexus when they hire California companies to promote their products, that creates a nexus. This will be controversial, but members, it's time we sent that signal. We need to be able to collect those use taxes. These companies who are making exorbitant profits, as one witness testified at our hearing, by selling to the very lucrative California market, ought to be willing to help. This is paralleled on a statute that New York did. New York has been taken to court on this and has won at the trial court level. I say that it's time for us to join New York and take this to those folks, and if they don't want to do it this way, then find another way, but you've got to help us collect the money that's owed to us. This could be, if we got it right, or got appropriate federal approvals, that maybe this will bring us some attention to, worth over $1 billion a year. Ask for your aye vote.
Debate or discussion? Senator Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. President. With all respect to the author, I have a slightly different opinion on this measure. Now, yesterday I can tell you that people that have a very definite interest in this measure told us about what happened in New York. And it's been said we should do like New York did with this measure. Well, a major internet retailer in New York had 1,400 affiliates, local in New York, small businesses in New York providing hundreds of jobs that were affiliated with a major internet retailer. The day that New York passed this measure, that major internet retailer said, okay, New York affiliates, goodbye. 1,400 small businesses in New York, gone. Hundreds of jobs, gone. The tax revenue now that was collected because of this new measure, zero, because they went and found affiliates outside the state of New York. That's what will happen if you pass this measure and it's signed into law. All those California-based affiliates that you're trying to go after in order to try and get that tax revenue, they'll be unemployed, out of business, out of work, no tax revenue.
Further debate or discussion? Senator Leno.
Thank you, Mr. President. The other component of this conversation, which is missing so far, are all of the small businesses in our communities, in our neighborhoods, who can't compete with Amazon and others with such a business model. They want to do business in states that don't have sales taxes. They don't want to collect the taxes. Oh, remember, we have a sales and use tax. But consumers don't know about the use component. They don't proactively pay the state that money. It is our money. But your mom and pop bookstore can't compete because they've got to collect sales tax. So there's that aspect of this too. I would ask for your aye vote.
Further debate or discussion? Senator Wyland.
Mr. President, members, I'd just like to make a comment not directly related to the current bill that it is really incumbent upon us to consider, and that is that the cash economy, which pays no taxes whatsoever, is growing exponentially. And the amount of money that we can find there that is unfairly no taxes paid upon, while most other taxpayers are paying taxes, is enormous. We need to work with FTB and other experts to figure out a way to start fairly collecting some of this money. It is rising exponentially. So I would just make that as a recommendation down the road. Thank you.
Further debate or discussion? Senator Strickland.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I would like to address the comments made by my good friend, Senator Leno. I would say to Senator Leno on his argument, welcome to the 21st century. You know, people, like it or not, people like to buy things on the internet, especially young people. Christmas shopping, you don't have to go through lines. And so to have the argument about the mom and pop store, you know, we're in the 21st century now. People like to have more convenience. And then on top of that, that's like complaining that we have cell phones today. We have cell phones today, so we got rid of those companies that, you know, put monies in the payphones. You know, we have technology, and technology's there to make it easier for consumers to make decisions. I believe in the consumers and letting the consumers decide. I do stand with the mom and pop stores, but they're now starting to put up their items on the internet because they have to compete with other folks, and that's what competition's about. It's about competing for that dollar, competing to make that money. And so, therefore, I would say to my good friend, Senator Leno, welcome to the 21st century.
Senator Cedillo.
I appreciate the welcome to the 21st century, but I don't understand why we have to subsidize and create a competitive disadvantage. Let's let the market determine. Those who choose to go to a small bookstore, have coffee, support the local economy and local jobs should be able to. Those who prefer to go online, make a purchase, utilize the convenience, should choose to do so. What we should not do, though, is subsidize to create a competitive advantage or disadvantage. And that's what this does. This creates a competitive advantage for a choice. This is a subsidy for a choice, and it's a subsidy that we cannot afford. We have an obligation to the people of California first and foremost. And so this proposal is to say to the small businesses and the consumers and the people of California that it is wonderful in the global economy that we now have more choices. And it's wonderful in the global economy that we can choose on the global marketplace other options. But that is not something that the people of California should have to subsidize. And this is simply a desire and a request to bring an alignment of our systems of taxes in accordance and in alignment with the 21st century. I welcome you to the 21st century. I ask for an aye vote.
Further debate or discussion? Senator Huff.
Thank you for looking this direction. Members, this isn't about a small neighborhood store or the internet.
One moment, Senator Huff. I want to make sure the chambers come to order. Thank you, Senator Huff.
This discussion is not about a small neighborhood store or the internet. It's not about subsidizing. It's about whether you want to create a policy that removes those businesses that are doing these type of internet business from California and letting them be linked by a web page to another state. You have people that want to shop online. You have people that want to shop at a neighborhood store. That's both occurring. That will continue to occur regardless of whether we do this. But we have been talking about all these jobs. This is a very direct bill that will impact California jobs, not in the way you say you want to do. This cuts California jobs. So if you want to deal with the internet problem, that's a comprehensive nationwide fix. That's not California deciding we're not going to allow these to exist as they are now. This is a job killer bill, not a job creator bill. This is a well-intentioned bill, but it's missing the mark. I urge your no vote.
Further debate or discussion? Senator Ahlquist.
Thank you. Part of being a legislator in this 21st century is trying to figure out what is really fair to our constituents in California, if we are a California legislature. And when we think that 80% of business is small business and they need to be able to compete fairly, it is only right that companies that are out of state and marketing to us, that sales tax that Californians, when Californians purchase things, that sales tax needs to come back to the state of California to help us with our budget deficit. I am very much in support of this legislation. The other piece is that when we have all these small businesses, that they need to be able to compete fairly, and they need this change in law to compete fairly.
Further debate or discussion? Senator Wolk.
Thank you, Mr. President. This has been a very good discussion. We're going to talk a lot about taxes today when we get to the conformity bill. But I think it's important on this issue and on this bill to talk about the fact that this is a tax code that we're now living under that hasn't changed since 1937. So it's really important to take the first step toward trying to change that. And one of the major things that has changed is the presence of the internet. Not only internet, but the whole digital issues. We no longer have a manufacturing-based economy. It's a services-based economy. I mean, we have to look at making changes, and this bill begins to do that. This bill not only attempts to start dealing with the internet question, which is really one of fairness to businesses in our state, but it also pushes the question of tax collection, of taxes that are already owed. And that's really the majority of this bill. So I think it's really important to move this discussion forward and start moving this into the 21st century and recognize that there are many changes in our economy, and we ought to take advantage of the fact that we are looking at these issues in a crisis time and move these reforms forward. I urge and I vote.
Is there any further debate or discussion? If not, Senator Duchesne, you may close.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the debate members, and I would only say two major things in response. It is those small businesses that Senator Cedillo and others referred to, but it is also our large corporate firms in California who also, do online sales. Every time I buy a baby shower gift online from Bed Bath & Beyond or Babies R Us, they do charge that sales tax. They do collect it and remit it to the state, as good corporate citizens should. What we have here, members, is people who are abusing the model. And I have heard from the same folks that Senator Hollingsworth referred to with respect to this question of people taking away their connection to California companies. And all I can say is, members, I think it's time for us to lead on this. I understand there are federal implications, but I think California is big enough that we should not to submit to that kind of blackmail. And that's just pure what it is. It's blackmail by out-of-state companies who are telling us, if you don't allow us to put your existing companies who are in California paying property taxes, paying payroll taxes, collecting sales tax, if you do not allow us to pursue a business model that puts those companies at a disadvantage, then we are going to pull more jobs out of your state. That's just pure and simple blackmail, members. Californians should not submit to that. I understand the federal implications and I understand the legal issues here, but it's time for us to stand with New York and some other large states and say enough is enough, this one counts, and certainly all of the other measures that are in this bill, the tax enforcement measures that the Franchise Tax Board is asking for as tools Senator Wolk has been working on for a long time, or all things that they need as well. I understand the one provision is controversial, but I think it's time for us to step up to the 21st century and say it's wrong to allow to advantages to out-of-state companies and to disadvantage our in-state companies who want that level playing field. Senator Strickland, ask for your aye vote.
Secretary, call the roll.
Onnested? Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? No. Calderon? Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? Corbett? Aye. Correa? No. Cox? No. Denham? No. Dusanier? Aye. Ducheney? Aye. Dutton? No. Flores? Aye. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? Hollingsworth? No. Huff? No. Kehoe? Leno? Aye. Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Maldonado? No. Negrete McLeod? Aye. Oropesa? Aye. Padilla? Pavley? Aye. Price? Romero? Aye. Runner? No. Smidian? Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? No. Walters? No. Wiggins? Aye. Wolk? Aye. Wright? Wyland? No. Yee? Yee, aye. Onnested, no. Cogdill, no.
Call the absent members.
Calderon? Harmon? Kehoe? Padilla? Padilla, aye. Price? Wright?
Ayes 20, noes 14. Senator Ducheney moves the call. Members, that takes us to file item 14. Senator Ducheney, I believe that is your next item, file item 14.
Yes.
Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 10 by the Assembly Committee on Budget, an act relating to tribal gaming.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, members, members, this is with respect to specifically to funds paid under certain contract provisions to fund transportation. It redirects $101 million of those funds from transportation loan repayment into the general fund. We have done this the last couple of years during this fiscal emergency, members. It remains funding transportation issues, but it's redirecting it back to the general fund for purposes of assisting us with other transportation debt and programs. Ask for your aye vote.
Debate or discussion? Debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Onnested? Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? No. Calderon? Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? Aye. Corbett? Aye. Correa? No. Cox? No. Denham? Dusanier? Aye. Ducheney? Aye. Dutton? Aye. Flores? Aye. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? Hollingsworth? Huff? Aye. Kehoe? Leno? Aye. Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Maldonado? Aye. Negrete McLeod? Aye. Oropesa? Aye. Padilla? Pavley? Aye. Price? Romero? Aye. Runner? Smidian?
Aye.
Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? No. Walters? No. Wiggins? Aye. Wolk? Aye. Wright? Wyland? Yee? Yee, aye. Denham, no. Hollingsworth, aye. Padilla, aye. Onnested, no. Runner, aye. Wyland, aye. Kehoe, aye. Cox, no to aye.
Ayes 29, no 6. Senator Duchesne moves a call. Senator Runner, for what purpose do you rise, sir?
To take up the measure that was passed earlier, AB 7.
Your voice has changed, Senator Runner.
Sorry.
That's all right.
That was what Senator Renner, I think, was trying to
We'll revisit
just...
file item number 11. Thank you both. I understand matters have been resolved on both sides of the aisle. Secretary, please read.
Go ahead.
Assembly Bill 7 by the Assembly Committee on Budget, an act relating to the environment, making an appropriation therefore, and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Senator Duchesne defers to Senator Runner. Senator Runner?
Thank you, Mr. President. One of our concerns is, again, what happens when you get legislation that captions so fast that you can't get a full review of this. There were some questions that we had, that some of the industry had. I've talked to some of those folks, the soft drinks, some of those folks that originally we thought had a concern about. They're fine with moving this bill forward with an urgency, and I'd ask for an aye vote.
Thank you very much. Further debate or discussion? Senator Duchesne, you may close.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, members, I appreciate Senator Runner's statement. We did work well with them. There were some of those issues were raised in committee, and I appreciate the work that all the staffs did to try to address any of those concerns. Again, members, this will stabilize the fund and allow us to have a fuller policy discussion on how to move forward in the budget year. Ask for your aye vote.
Secretary, call the roll.
Onnested, aye. Alquist, aye. Ashburn, no. Calderon, Cedillo, aye. Cogdill, no. Corbett, aye. Correa, Cox, Denham, no. DeSaulnier, aye. Duchesne, aye. Dutton, Flores, aye. Hancock, aye. Harmon, Hollingsworth, no. Huff, Kehoe, aye. Leno, aye. Liu, aye. Lowenthal, aye. Maldonado, aye. Neglect McLeod, aye. Oropesa, aye. Padilla, aye. Pavley, aye. Price, Romero, aye. Runner, aye. Semidian,
Aye.
aye. Steinberg, Strickland, no. Walters, no. Wiggins, aye. Wolk, aye. Wright, Wyland, aye. Yee, Yee, aye. Dutton, aye. Correa, no. Huff, aye. Mr. President, ayes 26, no 7.
Ayes 26, no 7. Senator Duchesne moves a call. Senator Runner, for what purpose?
Just a quick question to Senator Cheney. My understanding is that I just want to clarify that there was a letter going into the Journal to clarify some of the concerns and some that we had, and that's been agreed on both sides.
Yes. I just didn't know whether it was prepared to be submitted by you yet, but yes, there is agreement, members, that there will be a letter to the Journal that's been approved by both sides. Ask for permission to submit.
Thank you very much, Senator
Thank you.
Runner. Thank you, Senator Duchesne. Members, we have 7 bills in the 8th extraordinary session which are all on call. At this time, we're going to go back to the beginning of the file items that have already been heard, and we will lift the call one time on each and every one of those items. If members are not in the chambers and at their desks, this would be a good time to hurry back to the chambers. We'd ask the Sergeant-at-Arms to please do what they can to ensure that members are here in the chambers as we lift the call on these 7 items in the 8th extraordinary session. Members, we will begin by lifting the call in just a moment. We will lift the call in just a few moments. Are there other items before we move to lifting the call on these 7 items? information or announcements regarding the day's business, if any, members? Members, while we prepare to take up these 7 items that remain on call, Senator Steinberg, do I understand that you have a bill you'd like to take up?
I do have a bill as part of the jobs package.
And one moment, Senator Steinberg, if I may, please. Is this in the 8th extraordinary session?
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, then we are in the right session. Thank you.
This is like the opportunity, please, to take up Senate Bill 29 in the 8th extraordinary session.
File item 3. Secretary will read.
Senate Bill 29 by Senator Steinberg, an act relating to public employment.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This bill seeks to make a practical, common sense change to the executive branch's policy to impose 3 days of furlough across the board for all state employees. The impact of these furloughs has been well documented in terms of their impact on workers, 14%, nearly 14% cut. In addition, as the representative for the city of Sacramento, I can tell you what Furlough Friday has meant to a number of downtown businesses and their ability to maintain viability. But there's another fact which has come out into the public domain over the last several weeks as a result of our nonpartisan Senate Office of Oversight and Outcomes work. And that is the undisputed fact that at the Franchise Tax Board and the Board of Equalization, for every dollar saved in personnel cost as a result of the furloughs, we are losing $7. Let me put it more directly with the Franchise Tax Board. We are saving $65 million in personnel costs, but we are losing approximately $465 million because there aren't the resources in place to conduct the proper audits, to be able to collect tax money that is owed to the people of California. And a similar statistic exists for the State Board of Equalization. So this bill simply exempts the Franchise Tax Board, the Board of Equalization, and those state agencies which have less than 5% of their funding derived from the state general fund. Let's not be penny wise and pound foolish. Let us do everything we can to save every dime we can now and amend this furlough policy. I ask for an aye vote.
Debate or discussion? Senator Onestad.
Mr. Chairman, members, I too rise in support of this bill. It makes no sense to me that when license fees have already been paid, for example, in the Department of Consumer Affairs for the dental board or the medical board, and those salaries are paid by license fees and not the general fund, that those folks are furloughed. The people of this state have paid for those services by paying their license fees. They should get those services. And this extends to many agencies, especially when we include the federal dollars that we are losing because of furloughing people. Putting these people back to work also increases their own personal tax liability, which is a good thing. We want jobs so that we can increase the income tax income to the state of California. I don't see any real reason for not supporting this bill, so I would urge you to support it.
Debate or discussion? Senator Denham.
Well, Senator Steinberg says this is penny wise and pound foolish. I would disagree because I think that we've just seen a bill go through here a little while ago that transfers money from the Tribal Gaming Fund to the general fund. This bill here is now going to spend that money to get rid of furloughs. If the objective is really to put people back to work and make sure that those fees are going to services, then we ought to reduce the amount of salary or reduce the size of government so that we can afford to do so. Now, here in this body, we took an 18% cut. I think that it's great that we finally led by example, but at some point, don't we have to send the same message to every other state employee that you either reduce the size of government, reduce the thousands of jobs that we added last year to the bureaucracy, or reduce the amount that we're paying them? But just to arbitrarily get rid of the furloughs, which I assume at this point the governor's not supporting, rather than just get rid of those furloughs, we need to look at the entire budget deficit and the entire cost of government. I'm voting no.
Senator Cox.
Members, in January of last year, I visited with the governor and suggested to the governor that the furlough package wouldn't work as it was supposed to work. There have been illustrations, and by the way, I said to the governor, we're at that stage where it is a situation that we're going to have to ask people to do more for less. The governor believed that the furlough package was the right approach, and so he continued. Several weeks later, I had a group of physicians who work for the state of California. Interestingly enough, they work for the state of California, but they're paid by the federal government. So in just numbers, for example, the physicians cost $100 a day, and yet from the federal government they were collecting $150. And so for every day that those physicians were furloughed, there was a net loss. And members, I am one who believes that based upon our financial crisis that we in fact are going to have to recognize that we're all going to have to do more for less. The furloughs as they are currently enacted is not fair. It's not fair to the people who, as Dr. Onset said, have already paid those fees. It is simply also a fairness issue. And so as I stand here today and ask for your aye vote.
Further debate or discussion? Seeing Senator Correa. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just wanted to very quickly point out again and remind the folks here that we're talking about employees of the state that are special fund employees. These are people, for example, that work for the California Medical Board, investigators with the California Medical Board, for example, that investigate medical malpractice. So essentially have employees of boards and bureaus that are looking out for the health and safety of our constituency in the state of California. That is why it's so critical that this bill move forward. I ask for an aye vote.
Further debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none. Senator Steinberg, you may close. No close. Secretary will call the roll.
Onnested? Aye. Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? No. Calderon? Aye. Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? Aye. Corbett? Aye. Correa? Aye. Cox? Aye. Denham? No. DeSaulnier? Aye. Ducheney? Aye. Dutton? Flores? Aye. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? Hollingsworth? No. Huff? Aye. Kehoe? Aye. Leno? Aye. Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Maldonado? Negrete McLeod? Aye. Oropesa? Aye. Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Price? Aye. Romero? Aye. Runner? Aye. Semidian?
Aye.
Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? No. Walters? No. Wiggins? Aye. Wolk? Aye. Wright? Aye. Wyland? No. Yee? Yee, aye. Mr. President, ayes 30.
Call the absent members.
Dutton, Harmon, Maldonado.
Ayes 30, noes 6. The bill is passed. All right, members. This time we're going to take up the 7 items that remain on call. If we could ask for quiet in the chamber so that we can move through the lifting of the call quickly. And we will begin with file item number 5 in the 8th extraordinary session. Secretary, please lift the call. Call the absent members.
Calderon, aye. Denham, no. Harmon, Leno, aye. Denham, no to aye. Mr. President, ayes 38, no 0.
Ayes 38, no 0. The bill is passed. Final item 6. Please lift the call and call the absent members.
Calderon, aye. Denham, no. Harmon, Leno, aye. Mr. President, ayes 23, noes 15.
Ayes 23, noes 15. The bill is passed. Final item number 7. Please lift the call and call the absent members.
Calderon, aye. Denham, no. Harmon, Kehoe, aye. Leno, aye. Price, aye. Wright.
Call the absent members.
Harmon, Wright. Wright, aye. Mr. President, ayes 24, noes 14.
Ayes 24, noes 14. The bill is passed. Final item number 8. Please lift the call and call the absent members.
Calderon, aye. Denham, no. Hancock, no. Harmon, Kehoe, aye. Leno, aye. Liu, no. Pavley, Price, no. Wright. Pavley, no.
Call the absent members.
Harmon, Wright. Wright, aye. Mr. President.
Ayes 30, noes 8. The bill is passed. File item number 12. Please lift the call. Call the absent members.
Calderon, aye. Harmon, Kehoe, aye. Price, aye. Wright.
Call the absent members.
Harmon, Wright. Wright, no.
Ayes 23, noes 15. The bill is passed. File item 14. Secretary, please lift the call and call the absent members.
Calderon, aye. Harmon, Price, Wright. Wright, aye.
Call the absent members.
Harmon, Price. Price, aye.
Ayes 32, noes 6. The bill is passed. File item 11. Members, a reminder, this is an urgency item and requires a 2/3 vote. Secretary, please lift the call. Call the absent members.
Calderon, aye. Cox, Harmon, Price, Steinberg, Wright. Wright, aye. Correa, no to aye. Price, aye.
Call the absent members.
Cox, Harmon, Steinberg. Mr. President, ayes 30, no 6.
Ayes 30, no 6 on the bill. Ayes 30, no 6 on the urgency. The bill is passed. Members, that completes our business in the extraordinary session. We will recess the extraordinary session and reconvene the regular session. Is there any further business in the regular session, members?
Senator Wolk had an item. Number 2.
Members, forgive me. We are going to recess the regular session. We are going to reconvene the 8th extraordinary session. Once again, the prayer and the pledge will be deemed complete. And we have one item with Senator Wolk. Senator Wolk, what file item is this, please?
File item 2.
File item number 2. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 32 by Senator Wolk, an act relating to taxation.
Senator Wolk, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is a tax conformity bill. This will conform state tax law to federal tax changes that have occurred since 2005. This measure will include provisions that provide relief to struggling homeowners, ensure that renewable energy projects are not unduly taxed on federal grants, and provide needed conformity to federal tax law, easing tax preparation for taxpayers and tax preparers alike. The measure provides partial conformity to the Federal Mortgage Debt Forgiveness Relief Act, which prevents the onerous taxation of distressed Californians who are already struggling to protect their homes, their largest investment. As many Californians face foreclosure and are forced to walk away from their homes, the last thing that they should have to think about is paying taxes on debt that they cannot repay. This measure puts an end to the onerous application of tax law. Again, this is conforming to federal provisions. Additionally, since tax credits are not considered income, taxing renewable energy production grants would treat the renewable energy production industry unfairly and would add additional costs onto these projects needed for job creation and energy sustainability. This measure also conforms to the federal erroneous claims for refund penalty, which is an important penalty that has been in place in federal law for the last 3 years. The penalty is necessary to ensure that taxpayers don't take a risk-free gamble by claiming unmerited tax refunds when they file an aggressive tax claim. This only applies to filers above $250,000, and taxpayers do indeed have the right to appeal. This, again, we are conforming state law to tax law, and that should bring benefit to our society. I ask for your aye vote.
Debate or discussion? Senator Dutton.
I'm going to rise in opposition because this isn't really true conformity. This is actually selective. And when you're talking about conformity and trying to remain at a competitive edge, it's important that we look at a complete package. So I would encourage, I think this is a good effort, but it's not complete, it's too selective, and could actually turn into have some unintended consequences. I would encourage a no vote.
Further debate or discussion? Senator Calderon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Unfortunately, I must rise to oppose this measure. As a general rule, I don't think you've ever seen me speak out against a fellow caucus member, but unfortunately, I must do so today. The measure that is before you represents a reincarnation of AB 1580, which this House approved last September. AB 1580 was vetoed by the governor because of a provision inserted in Senate revenue tax. This provision is the erroneous reporting provision, which was vehemently opposed by the businesses in California, which prompted the governor to veto the bill. The measure before us today contains the same erroneous reporting provision, and it is my understanding that the governor is to veto this bill as well. Now, we've sent bills to the governor before, knowing surely that he'd be vetoing it. So why should we reconsider that course of action for this bill? Because this bill also contains a provision that was first in the bill of mine last year and in a bill of mine introduced in the 8th Extraordinary Session. The bill is SB X 825, which has not been granted a hearing of action in Rev and Tax. My bill would provide tax relief for Californians who are forced to relinquish their homes through a short sale, and it would bring California's tax law in this regard into conformity with federal law. I don't know if many of you know what a short sale is. It's when a homeowner sells his or her home for less than their mortgage, and then the lender forgives the remaining debt. However, California's tax laws treats the forgive debt as income. This becomes an impossible tax burden to bear for those who have just suffered the emotional and financial stress of a short sale. For instance, if you owed $350,000 on your home, but you could only sell it for $250,000, in a depressed market, that forgiven debt of $100,000 would be treated like income and therefore taxable. Can you imagine getting hit with a tax like that in this day and age? Last year, there were 90,000 Californians who lost their homes through short sales. They need our help. It is estimated that my bill would provide tax relief to 500,000 Californians through 2012 when the bill sunsets. Yet this important provision has been incorporated into a measure whose fate is doomed. Some might view our actions today as a majority using the poor folks who are desperate for tax relief as a leverage in a battle with the governor. Let's not allow that to happen today. Let's put people before politics. We can start now with a no vote on this bill. I ask for your no vote.
Further debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Senator Wolk, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the comments that have been made, and I'd like to assure our senator, my colleague, that those issues and those provisions that you were concerned about and you spoke to me about involving the homeowners are incorporated into the bill. We all should be supporting that. As to the erroneous penalty, it only applies if you lie on your request for a refund. That's what this is about. It's about lying on your refund, requesting a refund that is erroneous. And this is about aggressive tax filers. This is not about the little guy. It's not. There is no penalty for doing that, for lying on your refund and requesting a refund that is just exorbitant. The way the tax system works, the deterrence in the tax system is penalties, because not everyone in the world can be audited. So it's really important that we support this. It was supported and put through by the Bush administration. It is a good piece of tax law. I ask for your I vote.
Secretary, call the roll.
Onstead? No. Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? No. Calderon? No. Cedillo? Cogdill? No. Corbett? Aye. Correa? No. Cox? No. Denham? No. DeSaulnier? Aye. Ducheney? Aye. Dutton? No. Flores? Aye. Hancock? Harmon? Hollingsworth? No. Huff? No. Kehoe? Aye. Leno? Aye. Liu? Lowenthal? Aye. Maldonado? Negrete McLeod? Oropesa? Aye. Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Price? Aye. Romero? Aye. Runner? Smidian?
Aye.
Aye. Steinberg? Strickland? No. Walters? No. Wiggins? Aye. Wolk? Aye. Wright? No. Wyland? No. Yee. Hancock, aye.
Call the absent members.
Cedillo. Harmon. Lou. Aye. Maldonado. Negrete McLeod. Runner. Steinberg. Yee.
Call the absent members.
Cedillo. Harmon. Maldonado. Negrete McLeod. Runner. Negrete McLeod, no. Runner. Steinberg. Yee.
Call the absent members.
Cedillo. Harmon. Maldonado. Runner. Steinberg. Yee.
Call the absent members.
Cedillo. Harmon. Maldonado. Runner. Steinberg. Yee.
Call the absent members.
Cedillo. Harmon. Maldonado. Runner. Steinberg. Yee.
Senator Wolk moves a call. Members, do we have other items of business in the 8th extraordinary session? Under motions and resolutions, Senator Cedillo, for what purpose do you rise, sir? This is item number 4. Is that correct, Senator Cedillo? Secretary will read.
Senate Bill 31 by Senator Cedillo, an act relating to community colleges.
Senator, forgive me, proceed.
Members, a bill that should probably be on consent, but this provides us an opportunity for everyone to register their vote. An incredible proposition that both Senator Pavley and I are working on. One that takes ERA funds, shares them with the community college district. They will match those funds. We will put people to work. We will save energy. We will save resources for people going to community colleges. It's a good bill, one that everybody should embrace. I ask for an aye vote.
Further debate or discussion? Secretary, call the roll.
Onnested. Aye. Alquist. Aye. Ashburn. Aye. Calderon. Aye. Cedillo. Aye. Cogdill. Aye. Corbett. Aye. Correa. Aye. Cox. Aye. Denham. Aye. DeSaulnier. Aye. Duchesne. Dutton. Flores. Aye. Hancock. Aye. Harmon. Hollingsworth. Aye. Huff. Aye. Kehoe. Leno. Aye. Liu. Aye. Lowenthal. Aye. Maldonado. Negrete McLeod. Aye. Oropesa. Aye. Padilla. Aye. Pavley. Aye. Price. Aye. Romero. Aye. Runner. Smidian.
Aye.
Aye. Steinberg. Strickland. Aye. Walters. Aye. Wiggins. Aye. Wolk. Aye. Wright. Aye. Wyland. Aye. Yee. Kehoe. Aye. Dutton. Aye. Yee. Aye.
Call the absent members.
Duchesne. Aye. Harmon. Maldonado. Runner. Steinberg.
Ayes 35, noes 0. The bill is passed. Other items, members? Do we have other items in the 8th extraordinary session? Senator Wolk, do you wish to lift the call at this time, or are you hoping for another moment or two to pass before you lift the call? Another moment or two, I understand. Do we have any informational items, members? In memoriams? Senator, for what purpose do you rise, Senator Denham?
Mr. President, I rise to recognize Leadership Merced today. Welcome them to the chambers. Thank you.
I want to thank them. We remain in the 8th extraordinary session, members. Senator Weiland, for what purpose do you rise? All right. Good. Okay. Senator Wolk, I think that moment or two has passed. Members, I'd like to remain in the 8th extraordinary session just to provide clarity. Okay. Members, I would ask that members remain in the chambers. I understand we may have one item to take up in the regular session once we have recessed the extraordinary session. Senator Wolk? Senator Wolk asked that we lift the call. This is on file item 2 in the 8th extraordinary session. Secretary, please lift the call and call the absent members.
Cedillo, aye. Harman, Maldonado, Runner, Steinberg, aye. Yee.
Senator Wolk requests that we replace the call. The bill is on call, Senator Wiggins. Yeah. Members, we remain in the 8th extraordinary session where we have one item on call. Senator Yee. Members, we have one item left on call. That is file item number 2. At this point, Secretary, lift the call the absent members.
Harmon, Maldonado, Runner, Yee. Negrete McLeod, no to aye.
Ayes 21, noes 14. The bill is passed. Members, we will now recess the 8th extraordinary session and reconvene the regular session. Is there any further business in the regular session? Senator Romero, for what purpose do you rise?
File item 6.
File item 6, Secretary will read.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 64 by Senator Romero relative to American Heart Month and Wear Red Day.
Members, this is the resolution to acknowledge February as the month in which we are aware of cardiovascular disease, encourage us to wear red. I ask for an aye vote.
Debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Onnested? Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? Aye. Calderon? Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? Corbett? Aye. Correa? Cox? Denham? DeSaulnier? Ducheney? Oh, DeSaulnier, aye. Ducheney? Dutton? Aye. Flores? Aye. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? Hollingsworth? Aye. Huff? Aye. Kehoe? Aye. Leno? Aye. Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Maldonado? Negrete McLeod? Oropesa? Aye. Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Negrete McLeod? Aye. Price? Aye. Romero? Aye. Runner? Smidian?
Aye.
Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? Aye. Walters? Aye. Wiggins? Aye. Wolk? Aye. Wright? Aye. Weiland? Aye. Yee. Yee, aye. Denham, aye. Ducheney, aye. Onset, aye. Cox, aye. Correa, aye. Cogdill, aye.
Call the absent members.
Calderon, Harmon, Maldonado, Runner. Mr. President, ayes 35.
Ayes 35, noes 0. The resolution is adopted. If there is no other business, Senator Steinberg, the desk is clear.
Monday, 2. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Tomorrow will be a check-in session. It's a Friday. One of the reasons is the reason is that the remaining piece of the mid-year budget action, namely the complicated but important transportation-related issues, we want the bill will go across the desk today. We want it to be in print for the members and the public tomorrow. And then that requires us to be in session. We will then take up those measures on Monday so that the public will have, members and the public will have a full 3 days in order to be able to review the particulars of this very important set of measures. So session will reconvene 2 o'clock on Monday. Tuesday and Wednesday are check-in sessions. Thursday, unclear at this point. And that's it. Thank you for your good work today. Tomorrow's a check-in. Thank you for your good work today. We made about a $4 billion dent in the deficit today as a result of our actions. When the Assembly, of course, completes its work and the Governor signs, and we'll continue that work on Monday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Steinberg. The Senate will be in recess until 3:30, at which time the adjournment motion will be made. We will check in tomorrow and reconvene Monday at 2 p.m. Without objection, Senate stands in recess.